Right then, moving to the next time scale of climate variability. There is evidence from many regions in many proxies that there are these millennial timescale changes, oscillations in climate that are recorded in ice cores, in soil properties, in pollen, and so on. Millennial is basically a 1,000-year time scale, right? So multiples of 1,000 less than the orbital time scales are referred to as millennial time scales. I won't go into the details, but you can see that there is this 80,000 year time scale in ice core delta 018 showing colder and warmer periods before we get into this relatively warm period. And there are poor clay and carbon and rich clay and carbon soil properties in Europe that also show this 1,000-year time scale. So these are 80,000 years. So these little jumps around here, wiggles, are at 2,500, 1,500, and maybe even less kind of time scales. This is also European pollen record. Okay, the main point will be that these records are found everywhere and they seem to be corresponding to each other. These are sulfates from ocean salt and dust from land, which correspond to strength of the winds. The strong winds tend to pick up more sea salts and dust. So you can see that there are going to the last 10,000 years. I should use the other mouse, then maybe it's less clumsy. Whoops. Talking about clumsy. There is a 2,600 year scale here with some multiple smaller variations within that, and there is another 2,600 years. So there are multiple 2,600 year variations in wind strength within the last 10,000 years, okay, over the Greenland ice core. These are advances and retreats in mountain glaciers, maybe with a 2,500 year time scale. Zooming in here, which is, let's say, this is 10,000 year record showing a 1,500 year cycle with a question mark, 2,500 year cycle with a question mark. The one on the left is, I think, are they from different places? Yes, just two records showing two different time scales. The question marks because it's not very easy to explain these. These are variations in solar activity estimated from C14 productions, which are written as delta C14 in tree rings. What do we mean by C14? You can actually, I didn't introduce it, but carbon has multiple isotopes, C13, C12, and C14. C13 and C12 are stable. C14 is unstable. It's basically produced by energetic rays coming from space and hitting nitrogen, which is so abundant in the atmosphere. And nitrogen has 7 protons and 7 neutrons, right? Carbon has 6 protons and 6 neutrons when it is C12, but C13 obviously has 6 protons, which makes it a carbon, plus 7 neutrons, which makes it C13, whereas the cosmic rays that bombard the proton of a nitrogen and knock it into a neutron produce a C16, C6 plus 8, so C14, which is unstable, so continuously begins to decay with a half-life of about 8,750 years, I think, but you can check. So the trees that are photosynthesizing take up C12, C13 as well as C14. There is about the same amount of C14 in the atmosphere by this constant production, but based on solar activity or the strength of the cosmic rays hitting nitrogen, there is variability in C14 production. But typically when we age things, we look at C14 changes, and it doesn't seem to explain the 1500 or 2500 year time scale. So at this point, it's not clear solar forcing is responsible for that. There are other ideas like the North Atlantic cooling and northern ITCZ moving. Remember the ITCZ, which goes across the whole tropical belt, is related to the equator to pole temperature gradient because it is the energy equator. Remember that it is transporting energy south to compensate for the energy that is being moved to the north by the ocean. There is a huge sound being made by construction. I hope it's not getting recorded. The southern ITCZ as well moves and makes Antarctic warmer. So a cooling in the north can produce a warming in the south through these chain of links. That corresponds to also maybe a role for the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, where we said in the current climate we are moving energy from a colder climate to a colder hemisphere to a warmer hemisphere because it's mechanically forced to move the energy. But if you had changes in this Atlantic meridional overturning circulation and you didn't move as much heat from here to there, you would cool the North Atlantic and you would northern hemisphere in general, but let's say North Atlantic, and warm the South Atlantic. This time scale also could be order 1500 years to millennial time scales. Why are we waving hands like this? Because the observational evidence shows that such a time scale exists in climate variability, but we don't have a good explanation for it yet. There are other explanations that relate to the southern ocean circulation and its exchange with the other oceans. Remember, it's a channel where the Antarctic circumpolar current can keep going, but how much time does it take for it to communicate the signal with the, let's say, Pacific and Indian Oceans, where the deep and bottom waters are being pumped in? So that could be another possibility. Main message: there are millennial timescale oscillations that are observed and confirmed, but we don't have a good theory, and it's clear that that's not solar forcing either in terms of sunspot cycles or orbital forcing. Okay.